When the news of the Blade River Emperor's rise to fame spread, many of the emperors from the human faction who were on good terms with Luo Feng all contacted him passionately. At the start, Luo Feng was still trying his best. I had no choice, the Blood Beast Emperor and Heavy Arrow Emperor all wanted to kill me. If I didn't fight, I'd die. Hence I ended up like this. Luck, just luck. Haha, thank you. Luo Feng replied to his friends, after which he couldn't take it anymore and closed the virtual universe channel. Within the internal world, a silver-armored Luo Feng stood at the peak of a vast mountain. There were a few treasures placed there, the Emperor's ancient and powerful weapons, the seemingly unordinary fully formed armors and a few world rings and space rings. Of course LuoFeng's gaze landed on that ancient purple clock. Purple clock. Luo Feng said softly, I'll study you properly. To study this purple clock, his earth body had personally returned to the internal world. As for the outside world, he let the golden horned beast wear the Wu killer wings and hide within a mountain cave. In terms of strength, the golden horned beast was even stronger than his earth body, hence he wasn't afraid of meeting any strong warriors. These words. On the modeled ancient purple clock, it was filled with countless words. The words were square, however it wasn't any of the words Luo Feng had seen before. Babata, do you recognize these words? Luo Feng's consciousness asked. Babata was someone who frequently roamed the virtual network. With Luo Feng's authority, Babata had memorized all the words. I know countless languages, however I don't recognize these words. Babata said. Ah. Luo Feng nodded and didn't ask any further, concentrating on the ancient purple clock. The ancient clock was about 3 m tall, its mouth was also close to 3 m in diameter. There were countless words on it as he looked at it. These densely packed words seemed to be connected, almost like formless threads intertwining, almost like strange engravings. I don't understand. Luo Feng shook his head. I'll absorb it first. Luo Feng's hand lightly touched the body of the clock and a faint heat spread, as if he was touching a soldering iron. Immediately, a strand of spiritual force seeped in. This already ownerless purple clock quickly absorbed the spiritual imprint within the spiritual force and easily recognized its owner. Rumble? His consciousness rumbled. An ancient message flowed from the bell into Luo Feng's mind, stopping after a while. Secret combat technique, demonic tone fire god bell? Luo Feng creased his eyebrows. What entered his mind was a battle technique for using the purple ancient bell. However, he had only acquired the first level. As long as he mastered the first level and activated the purple ancient bell, he would be able to acquire the second level's contents. However, the conditions for the first level were very harsh. One had to master the law of fire and comprehend the law of space, spatial seal, before one could reach greater mastery of the first level. No wonder that Purple Zhong Emperor was able to redirect the explosion of the fire god origin crystal in one direction, using it to kill Cangjin Emperor. So he actually completed the first level. Luo Feng muttered, just the first level and the requirements are so high. Looks like this is a treasure suitable for universe supremacies. Luo Feng's vision was extremely high. Just the power from the start was already so ridiculous, with such harsh requirements. Obviously if he wanted to raise it further, he would have to be a universe knight. Fuse. Luo Feng tried to merge it into his body, however the moment the purple bell touched his skin, it was blocked. The general armor mark within his body seemed to tremble. Luo Feng creased his eyebrows. With a thought, the silver armor on his body immediately vanished, simultaneously forcing the armor pearl out of his body. At this time, Luo Feng was only wearing the cloud contact armor, after which he tried to absorb the purple ancient bell. Immediately, the purple ancient bell merged into his body, merging with his muscles and organs as one. So it's like that. Luo Feng shook his head. Then this purple bell is really useless to me, tasteless and a pity to throw away. The purple bell was a treasure, it could block over 90% of soul attacks and material attacks. It was a defense no weaker than the general armor. Of course, the general armor could still give Luo Feng 10,000 times Sector Lord strength. This was something the purple bell didn't have. However, the requirements to merge with the general armor were very harsh. Other humans had no way of using it. However, the purple bell didn't have any strict requirements. As long as one's spirit imprint was infused, it would recognize its owner. One had to admit, it was a treasure. However, it was really useless to Luo Feng, because there was a limit to how many defensive treasures could merge with one's body. Like the armor that merged with the skin, one could only wear one armor. It was definitely impossible to say, a strong warrior could pass on 10 or 100 armors at the same time. And to merge the armor pearl and the soldier armor pearl into the muscles and organs etc., completely merging into one, that meant one could only wear one armor or general armor. It was impossible to say. To wear multiple emperor armors or general armors at the same time, even to merge with the armor pearl, one had to force the soldier armor pearl out of the body. To merge with the purple bell, one had to force the armor pearl out of the body. The theory was the same type of defensive treasure, one could only use one at the same time. The general armor pearl and the purple bell, Luo Feng could only choose one of the two at the same time. Without a doubt, Luo Feng would definitely choose the general armor pearl. This is definitely a treasure, it should be one used by the knights of the universe. Luo Feng said softly, it's a pity I have the general armor. The golden horned beast has a better armor too. The general armor and emperor armor are the most suitable for me. Even though he was a bit disappointed, Luo Feng was still in a good mood. After all, this purple clock was still an important treasure. Just in terms of wealth, it far exceeds the 560 billion from before. And Luo Feng had another thought. Teacher Tru Yin treated him sincerely, so maybe this purple clock could help teacher. Let's see my other gain this time. Luo Feng immediately flashed and left the internal world, entering one of the world rings. Within this world, on an endless desert, lay the god body emitting endless pressure. Even though it was in deep sleep, that formless pressure was still as terrifying as ever. Heavy Arrow Emperor. Luo Feng smiled as he stood before him. Back then you were heavily injured. The best choice was to immediately self-destruct. If you self-destruct, then you might be able to revive countless years later, even though you would have to repay the huge debt from reviving. However, after becoming my slave, you would never be able to revive. Back then you were still hoping to escape. Who would have thought the cloud contact vine's 3 spikes would pierce into your body, causing you to fall into deep sleep? Being killed until one fell into deep sleep was a very rare sight. The Heavy Arrow Emperor didn't expect the cloud contact vine to pierce into his body and instantly corrode his god body, causing him to fall into deep sleep. From today onwards, you are my slave. Luo Feng looked at the Heavy Arrow King in front of him and immediately unleashed the 10,000 soul control technique. It wasn't like when he controlled the Bug Clan Queen Irina. Even though Irina also fell into a deep sleep, she fell into a deep sleep due to Hu Yenbo's soul technique. Luo Feng controlled it back then and Irina woke up and began to resist. However, the Heavy Arrow Emperor's injuries were too heavy, so heavy that he lost consciousness. At this time he was like a fish on the chopping block with no ability to resist at all. After a while. Success. Luo Feng smiled. However, looking at the unconscious Heavy Arrow Emperor lying on the desert, Luo Feng's eyebrows slowly creased. Yes, he controlled the Heavy Arrow Emperor, but it didn't help the Heavy Arrow Emperor's injuries at all. He was still heavily injured and in a state of deep sleep. A sleeping Heavy Arrow Emperor was useless against him. I have to let him recover his strength and recover his undying body. Luo Feng pondered. In the universe, there are indeed treasures that can speed up the recovery of the god body. However, they are extremely expensive. To pay such a huge price for an emperor-level soul slave, is it worth it? However, this is an absolutely loyal slave that can teleport. With his help, it'll be much easier for me to roam the universe. Let's go research first. This time, after killing the Purple Bell King and 14 other foreign race undying kings, they had obtained all sorts of armors, weapons and treasures from their world rings. For example, the Purple Bell King had a set of silver battle armor. This silver battle armor was worth 50 billion mixed elements in the Grand Mist world, and it could block 50% of material attacks. 50% and 90% didn't seem to have much of a difference. However, in reality, 50% only made Purple Zhong Emperor's physical defense twice as strong as before. 90% meant it was 10 times stronger than before. From this, one could see how valuable Purple Zhong Emperor General Armor and Emperor Armor were. If the General Armor and Emperor Armor could be used on a large scale, the price would be shocking. Even so, back then the Emperor Armor was priced at 50 billion in Hongmeng. Luo Feng spent 2 days of time. Through the virtual universe network in Hongmeng, he finally confirmed the price of his spoils of war. Heavy Arrow Emperor's wealth was about 60 billion mixed elements. Luo Feng took the ring from Heavy Arrow Emperor's finger and forcefully took it, carefully checking his treasures. The wealth of the 13 emperors added together was about 50 billion mixed elements. Purple Zhong Emperor's wealth was 120 billion mixed elements, not including the purple clock. Adding it all up, 230 billion mixed elements, along with a purple clock. It's still better to deal with powerful warriors like Purple Zhong Emperor who have fortuitous encounters. The rewards are much better. Luo Feng muttered, killing those normal emperors, killing 13 of them is only worth 50 billion mixed elements and it would cause a commotion. If I kill too many emperors, I'm afraid it would attract the attention of some absolute beings. How? People like Purple Zhong Emperor are the best. However, these people with fortuitous encounters, the bigger their trump cards are. Luo Feng thought, killing them is hard too. Like me, whoever kills me will probably strike it rich. However, killing me isn't that easy. Luo Feng thought, if I'm forced to the most dangerous situation, I can only summon the Primal Chaos City Teacher. The moment the Primal Chaos City Teacher appeared, anyone would be dumbfounded. Right, such a treasure like the Wu Killer Wings, it was given to me by the Primal Chaos City Teacher. If it wasn't bestowed by such an absolute being, trying to steal it is simply a dream. Stealing the purple clock was still possible. Stealing the Wu Killer Wings? That would be a dream. If I let the Primal Chaos City Teacher act, I would be a failure. Luo Feng shook his head. What do I do now? How do I deal with the spoils of war and how do I deal with the slumbering Heavy Arrow Emperor? Luo Feng now had more worries, happy worries. After Luo Feng carefully researched on how to wake up the Heavy Arrow Emperor, he learned of both good and bad news. The good news was that even though the Heavy Arrow King was an Emperor Pinnacle warrior, the so-called Emperor Pinnacle relied on body amplification techniques to instantly increase the quality of his undying energy. However, his overall energy didn't change at all. Just like the Golden Horned Beast, after using deities of the world, its strength increased greatly. However, the reason for the increase in strength was because his body had shrunk, his muscles and bones had become denser. And the Heavy Arrow Emperor who was in deep sleep had naturally released his body amplification technique. His current body state was that of a normal absolute emperor in deep sleep. Hence there was no difference between letting the Heavy Arrow Emperor recover or letting an absolute emperor recover. The bad news was, The Heavy Arrow Emperor's recovery had two stages. One was waking up from deep sleep, the second was a complete recovery. As long as he woke up, then the Heavy Arrow Emperor would have his own consciousness. He would be able to absorb the mysterious energy from many treasures to swiftly recover. However, when he was in deep sleep he couldn't absorb it. Hence, the treasures he needed were much more expensive. The awakening stage required 63 billion mixed elements. Even though it was only from 12% to close to 20%, the price was very high. The recovery phase required 58 billion mixed elements. It might not seem like much, but in reality, many peak king-conferred experts only had so much wealth. They had slowly accumulated this wealth over countless years. For example, the Blood Beast Monarch would rather cultivate peacefully for hundreds of millions of years than waste so much wealth. In the void, Barack 026. I'll buy it. Luo Feng, who was sitting at the peak of the ice mountain, gritted his teeth. No matter what, this is an absolute emperor. A living absolute emperor. He still has room to improve. With me providing him with resources, it'll definitely be much faster than training alone. Who knows, his strength might even rise a little. In terms of strength, the Heavy Arrow Emperor was stronger than Luo Feng. However, in terms of resources, how could the Heavy Arrow Emperor compare to the human race Luo Feng? His race was strong, and Luo Feng was the direct disciple of the primal Chaos City leader. The resources he received were indeed shocking. Just by giving some to his soul slaves, they would be able to enjoy as much as they could. In the following days, Luo Feng began to buy and sell on a large scale. Luckily, it wasn't like the pagoda treasure from before. It was much easier this time. Half a month later. Out of the 230 billion mixed element units, he spent about 120 billion to purchase various precious materials that could completely restore the Heavy Arrow King's strength. He also spent about 30 billion to purchase the strongest Fire God Origin crystal to slightly replenish it. The remaining 80 billion mixed element units plus the 10 billion left over from the huge harvest from the pagoda treasure last time. Even though he still had 90 billion mixed elements, Luo Feng wasn't in a rush to use it. Whether it was to improve his deity of the world, the Clow-scraper vine, or the thousand-vine star-eating grass, this little bit of wealth was far from enough. This made Luo Feng exclaim, the support plant life forms, automaton weapons, etc., these external methods are all created by using countless treasures, and these treasures have to be bought with wealth. 1 month after the battle that made Blade River King famous, in a world inside the world ring. A nutrition cabin that was completely made according to the Blade River Emperor's physique, the outside was 10 m long and 4 m wide, and the inside was slightly wider than the Blade River Emperor's physique. Black-clothed Luo Feng looked at the sleeping Heavy Arrow Emperor, a formless world energy extended out and carried the Heavy Arrow Emperor, before slowly entering the nutrition cabin. Luo Feng gently pressed the button. The transparent cover on the surface of the nourishment cabin automatically closed, and at the same time, a large number of strange liquid-like substances were automatically released inside. Many of them were ground up and melted into some liquid. The most expensive one was the Third Limit Bolo Leaf. Among the treasures that were worth 63 billion, that leaf accounted for more than 50 billion mixed elements. Cheech. The liquid enveloped the entire Heavy Arrow Emperor. The mysterious energy began to infuse into his body, after which the liquid began to churn, bubbles began to appear. It has begun. Luo Feng said softly. Heavy Arrow Emperor, if you hadn't become my slave, who knows how many years you'd be in slumber. Luo Feng looked at the nutrition cabin before him, after which he smiled. Of course, if I gave you the chance to choose, I'm afraid you definitely wouldn't choose to become my slave. No matter how weak you are, you're still yourself as a slave. No matter how strong you are, you're still a slave. However, this is the law of the strong and weak. You were killed by me until you fell into slumber. Who else can you blame? You can only blame yourself for not being strong enough. Time passed minute by minute. The color of the liquid within the cabin gradually became lighter. After about 3 days, the black-clothed Luo Feng who had been standing beside clearly felt his soul slave's consciousness ripple. Soon. Luo Feng revealed a smile. The moment there was a consciousness ripple, then it would be soon. Just an hour later, the Heavy Arrow Emperor's consciousness had completely recovered. Hula. The liquid within the nutrition cabin immediately became clear. The strange substances were completely swallowed. The transparent cover opened. The Heavy Arrow Emperor immediately flashed and landed in the desert. Looking at Luo Feng before him, he couldn't help but exclaim within. Once I fell, I became an eternal slave. However, Master was willing to use such a precious treasure to awaken me. He's a good master. After his soul was controlled, he naturally developed a good impression of Luo Feng, incomparably respectful. The Heavy Arrow Emperor realized he was a slave, realized he was being controlled. However, he didn't feel any disgust. The soul itself made him trust his master, naturally believing his master was good, listening to everything he said. This was a soul slave. From soul to soul, they were all completely loyal slaves. Unlike those slaves controlled by the biochips, even though those slaves were controlled, they were still unwilling and wanted to change their fates. However, a soul slave didn't have such a possibility. Master. The Heavy Arrow Emperor bowed. Luo Feng looked at the Heavy Arrow Emperor before him. The Heavy Arrow Emperor's body was currently covered in black armor. His mask was also black, extremely respectful and humble as he bowed. However, his 8 m height made Luo Feng feel like he was talking to a 3-story tall giant. It was indeed a little uncomfortable. Shrink a little, match my height. Luo Feng said. Yes, master. The Heavy Arrow Emperor's body swiftly shrunk. in an instant he was only 1.7 m, slightly bowing, almost like an obedient old housekeeper. Luo Feng nodded. An undying could easily change the size of his body, however this would affect his strength. Only with his original body could he unleash his true strength. Just like the Heavy Arrow Emperor shrunk like this, his strength would be affected by 30%. You'll be like this normally, during battle you'll return to your original size. Luo Feng said. The Heavy Arrow Emperor said respectfully, however I've just awoken, my body isn't even at 20%, my strength has been greatly affected. In a while, I'll let you recover your full strength in a short period of time. The black-clothed Luo Feng flipped his hand, immediately a mottled purple ancient clock appeared in mid-air, after which it fell, with a clang it landed in the desert. The Heavy Arrow Emperor turned to look, with one look his eyes gleamed, the ancient energy of the purple clock, anyone could tell this was a treasure. Luo Feng smiled at the sight. This is a treasure. The Heavy Arrow Emperor was excited. These treasures were usually owned by the Universe Knights. Amongst the Emperor-level warriors, there were very few who had such treasures. You can try recognizing me as your owner. Luo Feng smiled, the spirit imprint from before had already been removed. This purple clock was now an ownerless item. Even though Luo Feng planned to help his teacher Tru Yen, to see if the purple clock was useful to him, that was a matter for when he returned to Primal Chaos City. It was better to give it to the Heavy Arrow Emperor first. Moreover, the purple bell was a treasure that could only be used by experts who were proficient in the laws of fire and space. As for his teacher Tru Yen, he was proficient in the laws of earth and space. Whether or not the purple bell would be useful to his teacher was still uncertain. Yes. The Heavy Arrow Emperor was incomparably excited, extending his hand to caress the purple clock, after which he imprinted his spirit imprint. The purple clock immediately entered the Heavy Arrow Emperor's body. On the surface of his body there was a faint image of the clock, after which it immediately disappeared. The Heavy Arrow Emperor's eyes gleamed with worry. Master. The Heavy Arrow Emperor said respectfully, this purple clock has to be proficient in fire and space laws, only then can it be used better. And your subordinate. Back then I relied on the earth law to become undying, even though I have some comprehension of the fire law, I haven't reached a large success. Luo Feng looked at him. The Heavy Arrow Emperor said anxiously, however your subordinate's fire law has been recognized by the fire origin laws, even though after becoming undying, my undying body has long become a part of the earth law ocean, and it's hard for me to comprehend other laws. However your subordinate has been recognized by the fire law, there's still hope for me to comprehend it. Luo Feng laughed, I'll give you the purple clock for now, even if you can't use its other abilities, just its defense is extremely important to you. You should quickly comprehend the laws of fire. This is the treasure you'll need to recover your strength. Luo Feng casually threw, a space ring flew straight to the Heavy Arrow Emperor. After receiving it, he checked it and was overjoyed. Thank you, Master. Hurry and recover your strength, I'll still need your help when I'm roaming the dangerous parts of the universe. Luo Feng smiled. When a Sector Lord, one could comprehend all sorts of laws. Every law was very intimate with the Sector Lord. When undying, one's soul would completely fuse with the God body, becoming a part of it. The God body was formed from the God energy. It could be said to be a part of the origin law's ocean. For example, when the earth law becomes undying, if one were to comprehend the other laws like fire, water, light, wind, etc., one would be strongly repelled by the other laws. The difficulty of comprehension would rise by 10,000 to 1,000,000 times. Of course there were special circumstances. If one could obtain the recognition of a law early on, then there wouldn't be any repelling, however the comprehension would still be much harder. Also, above the metal, wood, water, fire and earth laws, was the space laws. When one perfects the metal, wood, water, fire and earth laws to become undying and comprehend the space laws, even though there would be repelling, there was still a chance to improve. It was just much harder than the Sector Lord level. Wind, lightning and light, these three laws, comprehending the time laws too, had a chance to improve. If one clearly comprehended the wind law, yet still insisted on studying the space laws, it was fine during the Sector Lord level. However, the moment one reached the undying level, there was no way to train at all. Time passed. In the blink of an eye another 3 months had passed. The Heavy Arrow Emperor finally recovered his full strength, reaching his peak condition. Master, you wish to go to the Star Tower? Within the villa, the housekeeper-dressed Heavy Arrow Emperor stood beside with a plate of food in hand, looking shocked. Isn't Master planning to leave the battlefield outside? Why would he want to go to the Star Tower? Luo Feng sat on the sofa, holding a glass of fruit wine, smiling. My military merits have long reached the requirements. However, since I've come to the battlefield outside, wouldn't it be a pity if I don't go to the most dangerous area? In terms of danger level, the Star Tower is the most dangerous area. The Sacrifice Yen continent is an entire level lower than it. Indeed. Heavy Arrow Emperor said respectfully, the number of emperors in the Sacrifice Yen continent is pitifully few, adding them all up. However, the Star Tower has gathered hundreds of thousands of emperors and undyings from the 4 camps. That many? Luo Feng was shocked. Our Great Alliance only has a total of 3 million emperors. This is the 7th battlefield outside the battlefield, the Star Tower. How can there be so many emperors gathered? Even though he planned to go, he hadn't studied the Star Tower in detail yet. Not many. Heavy Arrow Emperor said, the Great Alliance and the human camp are 2 different concepts. Anyone who joins the Great Alliance is definitely a loyal ally of the humans. Big and small wars, all sorts of conflicts. the races in the Great Alliance are completely tied to the humans' war chariot. However, the human camp outside the battlefield is different. It's an extremely loose camp. The Great Alliance is just one part of it. There are trillions of races in the universe, and the battlefield outside is the place with the most warriors. Many races that have nothing to do with the Great Alliance will negotiate with the humans, and then send their people to enter the battlefield as humans. Hence, even though it's said to be the battlefield of the 4 pinnacle races, it's actually the battlefield of countless other races. Of course, the number of warriors will be ridiculous. All the emperors in the battlefield outside the battlefield added up. Even if it's only 1% of all the emperors in the entire universe, it's still terrifying. That's one reason. The other reason is that the Star Tower is also an extremely special place in the extraterritorial battlefield. Compared to other dangerous places, it is easier to attract experts. The Heavy Arrow King said, as for the uniqueness of the Star Tower, Master can easily find out after checking. Luo Feng sat on the sofa and looked ahead, ordering projection. A screen appeared in the room, connecting to Luo Feng's arm guard, searching for information in the virtual universe network and displaying it. On the projection screen, a towering 9-story tower appeared. The tower had a total of 9 stories and was shaped like a square cone. It was very similar to some of the towers in Huaxia on Earth. At the same time, there were endless nebula vortexes revolving around the towering 9-story tower. The colorful nebula vortexes made people involuntarily lose themselves in them. The Star Pagoda was 9 light-years tall. Billions of years ago, when the foreign battleground was opened, this Star Pagoda had been in this side of spacetime. For countless years, it had been swallowing the endless energy of the universe. The energy it swallowed was so turbulent that it formed the 9 Spiral Nebula. It looked like a nebula, but it was actually an incomparably terrifying energy whirlpool. The 9 Spiral Nebula had a total of 9 spirals. The deeper one went, the more terrifying the tearing force of the vortex. At the 4th spiral, even undying emperors wouldn't be able to withstand it. Only Universe Paragons could safely survive within. The 7th spiral, even universe supremacies would be torn apart and annihilated. The ancient Star Pagoda was completely black, and it was unknown what material it was made of. It had experienced a large-scale battle between the 4 peak races, but it was not damaged in the slightest. It was said that even the high and mighty master of the universe was unable to damage the Star Pagoda in the slightest. The Star Pagoda nurtured a treasure called the Sealing Star. Every sealing star was the size of a normal planet. As long as it was refined, it could be used to seal experts through the Sealing Star. After defeating the enemy and sealing them into this Sealing Star, the enemy would never be able to escape. This level of treasure, even the universe supremacies wanted to obtain it. And within the Star Pagoda that was 9 light-years tall, there were countless sealing stars. Just like a drop of water in the ocean, even though the sealing stars were treasures, they were extremely common within the Star Pagoda. However, if the sealing stars didn't automatically appear, even the absolute beings of the universe wouldn't be able to forcefully take the sealing stars from the Star Pagoda. Message after message, Luo Feng was dumbstruck as he read. This. Luo Feng was shocked. Deep within the 9 Spiral Nebula, even universe supremacies would die without a doubt? Also, there are countless universe supremacy-level treasures, the sealing stars? Yes. Heavy Arrow Emperor exclaimed. I've heard that only the high and mighty master of the universe can safely enter the 9 Spiral Nebula. As for the sealing stars, look at the pictures at the back, there are indeed many of them. I've roamed the Star Pagoda for many years, and I've seen a total of a few hundred of them. However, I've never been able to obtain them. Unless I voluntarily appear. Otherwise it's impossible to obtain them. I've heard that back when the absolute warriors of the 4 peak races had just discovered the Star Pagoda, they even started a huge battle over it. Huge battle? Luo Feng was curious. Even though his position was high, he had only lived for a few thousand years. Many of the legends obviously paled in comparison to the Heavy Arrow Emperor. Achum. Heavy Arrow Emperor nodded. Back then when the 4 peak races opened up the battlefield, they chose this foreign starfield and began to sweep it. When they suddenly discovered the Star Pagoda, the universe supremacies in charge of the sweep realized how terrifying the 9 Spiral Nebula was. They also realized that their attacks couldn't even shake the Star Pagoda. They immediately recognized it as a treasure. It said that they immediately summoned the Universe Lord-level absolute beings. For this Star Pagoda, the 4 peak races started a huge battle. It said that many universe supremacies fell. As for the outcome, no one knows. All we know is that even the invincible Universe Lords couldn't do anything to this Star Pagoda. They could only let it stay here for countless years. Luo Feng nodded. Treasures could become bigger. However, normally there were limits. Treasures like the Killer Wu Wings could only expand to a few light years in size. It wasn't impossible. However, the prerequisite was that Luo Feng had that kind of power. And this Star Pagoda was 9 light years tall, yet it seemed to be only that big. It nurtured countless sealing stars, even the Universe Lords couldn't do anything to it. The countless races in the universe all say that this Star Pagoda is the highest and most powerful treasure in the universe. Heavy Arrow Emperor exclaimed. It's a treasure that even the Universe Lords go crazy over. However, this treasure, even if it's left in space for trillions of years, not a single warrior has been able to forcefully take it away. This is also why it's so famous. Powerful. Luo Feng exclaimed. It was an ownerless object. Just the whirlpool formed from devouring energy could easily annihilate Universe Paragons. It had once caused the 4 Great Peak clans to fight crazily, but in the end the 4 Great Peak clans were unable to bring it away. There were countless sealing treasures comparable to the purple clock, the sealing star. It was enough to make countless races go crazy. The peak races are the strongest races in the universe. Heavy Arrow Emperor said. Even the 4 peak races were unable to take this star pagoda away. This made countless warriors in the universe believe that relying on brute force and power was useless. A treasure like this star pagoda should be waiting for a suitable owner. Or in other words, no one has the right to be its owner. How? LuoFeng exclaimed. There are countless rumors. However, the warriors all yearn deep in their hearts. They yearn for the opportunity to become the owner of the star pagoda. Opportunities are after all hard to explain. Heavy Arrow Emperor laughed. It's because countless warriors have such thoughts. Hence, there are many emperors from the different races in the star pagoda. Also, the star pagoda will occasionally have a sealing star appear. Every sealing star is a treasure used to seal powerful warriors. It's enough to make the emperors go crazy. Plus, even the universe lords can't destroy it. No matter how they fight, it's naturally the pinnacle of battles. LuoFeng nodded. Within the universe, there were treasures suitable for the universe lords. Like the Wu-slaying wings, they could use it too. However, its effects were very small. Like those that could be used by the universe lords in battle, many of them were naturally indestructible. It was normal for the universe lords to not be able to destroy them. It's an eye-opener. LuoFeng exclaimed. I have to go take a look. Heavy Arrow, let's depart. LuoFeng stood up. We're leaving now? Heavy Arrow Emperor was stunned. Right. LuoFeng's eyes were filled with excitement. Yes, master. Heavy Arrow Emperor immediately replied respectfully. Sitting in the UNMO planet ship and traveling through the dark universe for a total of 2 days, they finally arrived at the closest point to the star pagoda. There were ripples in space. The sharp edges of the blood-colored triangular ship appeared. Within the ship's control room, the silver-armored winged LuoFeng stood there alone. As for the slave Heavy Arrow Emperor, he was temporarily in the world ring. After all, in terms of battle strength, LuoFeng himself wasn't weak. It was enough for him to roam the star pagoda. If there was any danger, it wouldn't be too late for Heavy Arrow Emperor to act. Taking out his trump card early was a very unwise move. Wow. Beside LuoFeng, a robot child jumped excitedly, pointing ahead. LuoFeng looked quickly. The star pagoda, wow, what a huge star pagoda. It's 9 light years tall. Just one pagoda is already so much bigger than the flame sacrifice continent. Even though we're so far away from it, it's still unbelievable. Almost as though it covered half the universe, the majestic star pagoda floated in space. That resplendent nebula whirlpool, with the star pagoda as the center, madly swallowing endless amounts of energy. This 9 Spiral Nebula seemed beautiful and resplendent. However, it was actually a strong warrior's nightmare. Universe knights that entered would be torn apart and destroyed. Unbelievable, it's unbelievable. LuoFeng looked at the star pagoda and muttered. What's with that expression? Didn't you read its information? Is there a need to be so stunned? The robot child Babata glanced at LuoFeng and muttered. LuoFeng was completely stunned at this time. The moment when the spaceship successfully traversed through the universe, he had felt an unimaginably terrifying summoning. The summoning had surpassed that of a soldier's armor, a general's armor, a king's armor, and even the black metal board of the Nameless Secret Tome. Not only was every cell in his body trembling, even his soul was trembling. It's the Nameless Manual's treasure that's summoning me? LuoFeng couldn't believe it. Just the fact that the Star Tower didn't have a master controlling it, the 9 Spiral Nebula it swallowed had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. From this, one could see that this 9 light-year tall Star Tower was called the highest and most powerful wonder. Even though it was a bit exaggerated, it wasn't by much. Such a powerful wonder could actually summon him so intensely? I can get the Star Tower? I can become the owner of the Star Tower? LuoFeng couldn't believe it himself. However, that soul-shaking feeling of the summon was so intense, it was obviously coming from the Star Tower. LuoFeng, LuoFeng. The robot child Babata beside jumped and shouted, What are you so stunned about? Nothing. LuoFeng took a deep breath and calmed down. Calm down. The more crucial the time, the more calm one had to be, one couldn't be rash. The Star Tower, to be able to stay in this space for trillions of years, even the tyrants of the universe can't force it, from this one can see how precious and mysterious it is. LuoFeng thought, Teacher can give me the Wu Killer Wings but the Star Pagoda, just the nurturing of the countless stars, Teacher can't give it to me? Obviously the Star Pagoda is much stronger than the Wu Killer Wings. Such a treasure, if it really landed in my hands, would I dare to use it? LuoFeng thought, to be able to make the 4 pinnacle races fight over it, the moment they find out I have this Star Tower, many tyrants of the universe will definitely come to snatch it, even if they can't control it. They could very well turn me into a soul slave indirectly controlling the Star Tower. Strength and treasures corresponded. Without strength, one wouldn't have the qualifications to acquire such treasures. Like the Wu Killer Wings, only the Primal Chaos City leader knew of its existence in the vast universe, the other warriors couldn't even recognize its uniqueness, hence the Primal Chaos City leader dared to give it to LuoFeng. And the Star Tower was too famous. In the vast universe, trillions of races who didn't know of the Star Tower. LuoFeng didn't have enough strength, obtaining it would be a disaster. The only choice he could make after obtaining it was to hide the Star Tower until he had the strength to wield it, to not fear the tyrants of the universe. Only then would he be able to use it publicly. I'm thinking too much. I'll first go take a look at the Star Tower. At least I can prove one point: the Star Tower and the Nameless Manual should have some connection. Luo Feng sat on the Yun-Mo planet ship and swiftly flew towards the Star Tower. As the saying goes, a horse dies trying to look at a mountain. Even though the Star Tower covered half the cosmos, the Yun-Mo planet ship, which was flying at light speed, still took more than 10 days to arrive. Although he could ask the Heavy Arrow King to help him teleport, because of the summoning of the Star Tower, his brain was heated up. Hence, he had to fly for more than 10 days to completely calm down the heat in his heart. The body of the Star Tower was surrounded by a bright nebula whirlpool. However, there was no nebula vortex at the bottom of the pagoda. The pagoda was split into 9 levels, and the lowest level had 9 entrances. Many alien Regis Godfiends and Marquis Godfiends who came to try their luck casually entered through one of the entrances. "We're here." A silver light stopped. The silver-armored and winged Luo Feng stopped at the entrance. In front of the Star Tower, it was impossible to see the end of the Star Tower. What kind of concept was 9 light years high? The difference between the sun and it was like the difference between dust and a high mountain. Let's try and see if it can recognize us as its master. Luo Feng took a deep breath. If he said he wasn't nervous, it would be a lie. No matter how calm he was, his heart was still burning hot. He extended his palm and gently touched the edge of the million km tall door. The black door was cold, and as he touched it, Luo Feng felt a sense of anticipation. Back then the armor and generals all automatically flew into his body, and he could easily control them. Luo Feng creased his eyebrows. His hand touched the door of the Star Tower, but there was no reaction at all. Owner recognition. A thread of spirit energy seeped in, attempting to imprint on the Star Tower. However, after the spirit energy seeped in, it was like mud entering the ocean. It was immediately swallowed. The Star Tower was still the Star Tower. Luo Feng had no way of recognizing and controlling it. This made Luo Feng anxious. He tried to use his blood to seep in again and changed his position. He no longer tried on the door but on the floor of the Star Tower. Failure, the recognition still failed. What's going on? Why isn't there any reaction at all? Even if I can't control it, it should at least have some reaction. Even when I obtained the Wu Killer Wings, it didn't react like this. Luo Feng was filled with suspicions. I can feel that the entire Star Tower is summoning my entire body. This summoning is coming from all parts of the tower, but no matter how I try, there's no reaction at all. So, in the distance behind Luo Feng, a silhouette appeared out of thin air. Following closely, that silhouette flashed and arrived beside Luo Feng. Blade River Emperor? A passionate shout resounded. Luo Feng turned to look. This was a malevolent-looking foreign race warrior with 3 horns on his face, his mouth revealing fangs, a scorpion tail for legs and 2 hands. Luo Feng recognized him with one look, smiling. Vulture Emperor. Vulture Emperor was from Camp 024, yet he had the reputation of an Emperor Pinnacle. With Luo Feng's memory, he naturally remembered this person. Haha, what a coincidence. Vulture Emperor laughed, looking even more malevolent. One could only say that it was because of his race's appearance. Or maybe Vulture Emperor himself thought his smile was very friendly. I've heard of your story, Blade River Emperor. I've always wanted to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you at this Star Tower door. Blade River Emperor, were you trying to recognize me as your owner? Luo Feng was shocked. Wait a moment, let me try too. Vulture Emperor was beside too. Whether it was a drop of blood or a spiritual imprint, he too tried. Only then did he turn and shake his head. Looks like I don't have such luck. All the warriors from different races who come to the Star Tower for the first time will try to recognize me as their owner. Who knows, they might get lucky. It's a pity that countless years have passed and countless foreign race warriors haven't succeeded. Luo Feng smiled and nodded. I haven't succeeded either. Blade River Emperor, how about you and I enter the Star Tower together? Vulture Emperor suggested. Dangers lurk in the Star Tower. The tower itself is filled with dangers. There are also hundreds of thousands of foreign race emperors. The battle will indeed be terrifying. This invitation also depended on strength. Vulture Emperor coming alone obviously didn't have a suitable person to invite in such a short period of time. And with Luo Feng's reputation as the Blade River Emperor, Vulture Emperor was willing to invite Luo Feng along. No thanks. Luo Feng smiled and rejected. Vulture Emperor didn't say much after hearing that. They were both from different races. They had their own thoughts and secrets. Naturally he wouldn't ask too much. Smiling, then I'll go first. After which he became a blur and swiftly entered the tower. Luo Feng waited for a while before entering the Star Tower alone. Since he was certain that the Star Tower had some special connection to him, it would be troublesome if there were other warriors around. Luo Feng naturally preferred to proceed alone. He also had his slave Heavy Arrow Emperor. Why would he need an Emperor Pinnacle Vulture Emperor to accompany him? Luo Feng walked within the vast tower. One step took him tens of thousands of kilometers. His silhouette was blurry as he moved swiftly. One could only hear the sounds of kakaka, rumble. As for the Star Tower, he had researched quite a bit before. He had also chatted with Heavy Arrow Emperor for a long time. Luo Feng was very clear about the internal structure of the Star Tower. The Star Tower was like a super large skyscraper. This super skyscraper had many rooms. Of course, the rooms in the Star Tower were actually forbidden areas. Every forbidden area would be connected to other forbidden areas through secret passageways. At the same time, countless forbidden spaces were constantly on the move. This meant that even if one didn't move at all within the Star Tower as time passed, one's coordinates would constantly change. Forbidden space. Luo Feng was currently within one of the forbidden spaces. The passages from before had already been sealed and disappeared. This was a forbidden space filled with endless desert. At the edges of the north, south, east, west, and the highest point of the sky, there were formless obstructions. No matter what, he couldn't get close. Scanning devices, world projection, spirit energy scanning, they can only search within the forbidden space. They can't penetrate this forbidden space and go to another one. Teleportation can only be used within this forbidden space. It's impossible to teleport to another forbidden space. Luo Feng was very clear on this point. If he wanted to escape, it was simple. Using the God Country teleportation, he would be able to leave the Star Tower. If he didn't escape, then he would have to travel through the many forbidden spaces. The prerequisite was that he had to first find the passage that connected two forbidden spaces. The Star Tower is majestic and 9 light years tall. Within it are countless forbidden spaces. Luo Feng surveyed the forbidden space. Rumble. The entire desert shook. Luo Feng was shocked. He turned to look only to see the entire desert shaking. At the same time, there seemed to be some huge creature crawling out of the desert. I've never heard the Heavy Arrow Emperor mention it before. Luo Feng summoned the Heavy Arrow Emperor. The Heavy Arrow Emperor appeared beside and said respectfully, "Master." At the same time, he noticed the entire desert shaking. His expression changed. Such a huge disturbance? Master, the Star Tower is filled with danger. Every forbidden space has a hidden danger. It's just that normally it wouldn't trigger. Even if it did, the danger would be different. Hence, the Star Tower is mostly filled with warriors killing each other. It's more dangerous. However, if the danger in the forbidden space really erupts, that would be terrifying. The bigger the disturbance, the more dangerous it is. Master, have you just entered? Why is there such a huge disturbance in this forbidden space? This is the first forbidden space I've entered. Luo Feng looked at the desert. The desert constantly bulged. It was almost as though a monster was awakening. Hua hua, countless grains of sand rolled down from the side. Gradually, a red carapace appeared from within the desert. A 1,000 kilometers long monster with over 10,000 claws that looked like a centipede's strange metal appeared. Its jade-green eyes stared at Luo Feng, filled with killing intent. A 1,000 kilometers level guard? The Heavy Arrow Emperor's eyes stared wide. He turned to look at Luo Feng. Master, the first forbidden space you've entered has already drawn out a guard, and even a 1,000 kilometers level one? I've been in the Star Tower for over 10,000 years. I've passed through countless forbidden spaces. The strongest guard I've met was only a 100 kilometers level. Luo Feng, however, slightly creased his eyebrows. I can clearly feel the Star Tower's strong calling to me. However, I can't recognize it as my master, and there's no special feedback. However, just entering the first forbidden space and drawing out such a strong guard, this at least is better than having no reaction at all. Luo Feng and the Heavy Arrow Emperor, these two tiny beings, raised their heads to look at the huge guard.